The pilots of a Douglas DC8 lost control of their plane immediately after takeoff from New York. The resulting devastation on that September day in 1970 killed all on board the plane. The answers to the questions surrounding what happened can be found leading up to and during the takeoff phase. Up till that point, the pilots had taxied out to the runway without suspecting anything was wrong with their plane. Little did they know that danger lurked where they couldn't see it. It was only when the plane was accelerating down the runway that things started to go wrong very quickly. So let's explore the background of this flight and examine the details of this takeoff process. Let's dive deeper into Trans International Airlines Flight 863. Trans International Airlines was an American air carrier that provided charter services for other airlines. Because of this, they operated with a variety of different planes up until the mid-1980s. One of the planes they flew was the Douglas DC8, a plane synonymous with its time period in an age of first-generation jet passenger planes. On the date of September 8, 1970, one of their DC-8s had been booked to fly a service from Washington, D.C. to Gatwick Airport in England. The specific plane that Trans International was using was positioned at New York's Kennedy Airport for most of the day, having completed a journey from California. In the mid-afternoon of that day, a crew mobilized to ferry it to Washington, where it would then pick up its passengers for its overnight transatlantic flight. The pilots of the plane turned up for work shortly after 2 p.m., and by 3:30, all the preparations were made for its journey. Trans International also booked a total of 8 flight attendants on the flight, and they too boarded to be ferried to Washington. Including the 3 pilots, a total of just 11 people were on board the DC-8. At 4 in the afternoon, the plane left the gate in New York, and the pilots started taxiing out to runway 13 right on the southwest side of the airport. The pilots themselves, as already stated, consisted of a crew of 3. 49-year-old Captain Joseph May would be the pilot monitoring and handling radio communication on this flight. He was an experienced pilot with over 22,000 flight hours. He also had extensive experience flying the Douglas fleet of planes, having also flown the DC-6 and DC-7 propliners. His first officer that day was 47-year-old John Loeffler, the man who would be in control of the plane. With over 15,000 flight hours behind him, he was an experienced pilot in his own right. The third member of crew, the flight engineer, was 42-year-old Donald Neely. As the youngest member of the crew, he had around 10,000 hours logged. All 3 of the men lived and were based in California. Trans International Airlines themselves were based in Los Angeles. The 3 of them flew into New York together the previous day. Seemingly without issues to the pilots, the DC-8 flying as Trans International Flight 863 was positioned on runway 13 right at Kennedy Airport at 4:04. Just 12 seconds later, the plane's 4 engines were powered up and the takeoff roll commenced at precisely 4:05 and 7 seconds. The investigation would conclude that the pilots had configured their aircraft for takeoff correctly. The pilots calculated that their rotation speed, that is, the indicated speed that a pilot can pull back on the control wheel and lift the plane into the air, to be on this occasion 124 knots. Given the plane's extremely light load, according to the accident report and the investigation's own review of the plane's weight and balance, also cross-checked by the aircraft manufacturer, the plane could begin its rotation with a speed of just 80 knots. The DC-8 accelerated up to and beyond the 80-knot speed. It was around this time, with the speed climbing up to 90 knots, that the plane began rotating seemingly uncommanded, and it did so at a progressive rate to an extreme degree of nose-up attitude. The DC-8, and in this case more specifically, the DC-863, is a particularly long and skinny plane. Some planes, such as the DC-8 historically, have a tail skid fitted at the back of the plane. It does exactly what it sounds like. It bears the brunt of force from a potential tail strike as to not damage the fuselage. The tail skid was recorded to have hit the runway at precisely 4:05 and 26 seconds. For a total of 9 seconds, the tail skid would scrape the runway before the plane eventually lifted off the ground. This rather unbelievable maneuver of rotation at this particularly slow speed was also backed up by ground witnesses who saw the accident unfold, describing the tail skid being dragged along the runway. As the nose ascended, the pilots wanted to push forward, but they did so with little response from the plane. But how did this really happen? How could the plane do this? To understand how the rest of the accident played out, we need to take a step back and look at something which on the surface seems unrelated, but it's to do with what was going on at the airport at the time. The Port Authority of New York, who runs Kennedy Airport, had been resurfacing the airport at the time of the accident. It was common that loose foreign objects would be found dotted about the airport, originating from the resurfacing work of taxiways and aprons. Following the accident, stones, pieces of asphalt, and so forth were later found scattered all over the airport, even on the taxiways that Flight 863 used to get to the runway for takeoff. The Port Authority exclaimed that they continuously kept clearing the runways of debris, but admitted they couldn't clear them of all objects. Jet blasts from countless other planes also likely contributed by blowing small pieces of earth, asphalt, and other material again all over the airport. It is believed that at some point, whilst either taxiing or even during the takeoff run, Trans International Airlines Flight 863 picked up some of this material. The investigation was unable to determine exactly whether DC-8 picked up this ground debris, only that they know it did by finding the matching stones amongst the wreckage. The investigation determined that stones were lodged inside the horizontal stabilizer, suggesting they were blown in there from jet blasts. But we can go even deeper. The horizontal stabilizers, those small wings at the back of a plane, work in two main components: the stabilizer itself, which can be trimmable, and the elevator, the smaller component that moves in connection with the pitching motion of the control wheel in the cockpit. Pushing and pulling on the control wheel moves the elevator. The stabilizer assembly as a whole is controlled by the trim wheel. The pilot flying, so the first officer, had pulled their control wheel back, therefore the elevators were in their nose-up position. Those small stones that had earlier been blown into the plane had become lodged inside of the crevices between the elevator and the rest of the stabilizer, more specifically only on the right side horizontal stabilizer. The plane naturally did get airborne. Once in the air, the pilots obviously wanted to stabilize their climb and attempted to move the elevators again, but in trying to do so found controllability issues as the right elevator became jammed. The runway debris that was picked up was now jamming the elevator movement. It was stuck in a high-degree nose-up position. Investigators would later find evidence of the pilots trying to deflect the right elevator past its jammed state, in the form of indentations and buckling of the metal caused by the lodged stones pressing into the elevator. The right side elevator was jammed at the 12 degrees nose-up position, whilst the left side could move freely. The incongruence of the elevators, which should be symmetrical, led to massive controllability issues. By the time the plane was in the air and the issue reared itself, it was too late for the pilots to abort the takeoff. The first officer even exclaimed to the rest of the crew that he had lost control of the plane, at which point the plane was already in the air and climbing. The nose of the plane pitched higher and higher, exceeding 60 degrees, only gaining a few hundred feet of altitude. Out of control with what little speed the plane had draining away, the DC-8 rolled sharply to the right about 20 degrees, followed by a fatal steep roll to the left, following through into an aerodynamic stall, the wings perpendicular to the ground. Seconds later, the plane impacted, where it was engulfed in flames, leading to the deaths of all 11 people on board. The investigation into the crash aimed criticism towards the actions of the flight crew. They stated in their report that there should have been ample time to notice the abnormal behavior of the plane. Investigators did not hold back on the pilots either, going on further to state that all relevant information was there for them to decide the corrective action of aborting the takeoff before the plane became airborne. Though the loss of control was a result of a jammed elevator, it was concluded that this accident was aggravated by pilot error. The causes of the accident prompted the investigation to recommend that all DC-8 operators be aware of such an occurrence as the one that transpired here. The DC-8 flight controls were recommended to be put under review and evaluation by aviation authorities. It was also recommended that some form of indication be installed in the cockpit to signal to pilots of a jammed elevator. A review of the DC-8's manuals suggested that procedures, including the subject of aborted takeoffs, could be improved also. The DC-8, though, is now a plane that is basically extinct. A total of just 5 planes exist in service today, all serving non-passenger functions, such as cargo and research. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it to be interesting, be sure to drop a like and be subscribed, as there is always a new video every Saturday. Speaking of new videos, some interesting ones are coming very soon. I'll be traveling down to London to shoot a lot of footage for an incident which involves the underground, so that is in the works. Also, possibly next week, maybe, if not soon, depending on if I need more time or not, there is a video coming that I have wanted to do for a very long time. More information surfaced recently and I think it's going to be a good one. But like I say, it's possible it may need a bit more time, but we'll see. Anyway, it's that time where I take a moment to thank my amazing patrons over on Patreon for their support. Their names are scrolling on the screen right now, so if you see your name here, a massive thanks to you. You know, if you are a patron and you want to connect with me, feel free to drop me a message on there. If you yourself want to support the channel further, then consider joining the Disaster Breakdown Patreon from just £1 per month, and the link to that will be in the pinned comment below. All patrons get early access to all new content 48 hours before it goes out publicly on YouTube. Anyway, I shan't make this any longer. That's all from me today. If you want to follow me on my personal Twitter page, that will be linked in this video's description as well. Hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.